In this podcast episode, Ben Shapiro dives into the Democratic National Convention, or DNC in short, highlighting the political landscape as it unfolds. The discussion begins with a recap of polling data, revealing that Vice President Kamala Harris is currently leading Donald Trump by a slim margin in several national polls. The Washington Post ABC Ipsos poll shows her ahead by about 4%, while CBS News indicates a 3% lead. The Real Clear Politics polling average places her lead at approximately 1.5%. Shapiro emphasizes that while Harris has the momentum, the race remains extremely close, particularly in battleground states like Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Michigan, where her performance could determine the election outcome. As the DNC kicks off, Shapiro notes the peculiar atmosphere surrounding the event, particularly the emphasis on joy and happiness that the Harris campaign is trying to project. This sentiment is juxtaposed with the reality of Harris's lack of substantive policy discussions. Shapiro criticizes Harris for avoiding difficult questions and for her campaign's reliance on superficial charm rather than concrete plans. A viral clip from the campaign features Harris receiving a bag of Doritos from Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, which Shapiro mocks as an attempt to portray her as relatable and down-to-earth. The podcast highlights Harris's communication style, which often includes vague and convoluted statements. Shapiro critiques her attempts to explain complex issues, such as the significance of democracy, in a manner that comes off as simplistic and juvenile. A notable moment discussed is her response to a question about her economic policies, where she repeatedly mentions return on investment without providing any real substance. This lack of clarity raises concerns about her ability to effectively communicate her plans to the electorate. The conversation shifts to Harris's economic proposals, particularly her plan to address grocery prices through price gouging laws. Shapiro argues that such policies are fundamentally flawed and could lead to disastrous consequences for the economy. A detailed analysis is provided, explaining how price controls could disrupt supply chains, lead to food shortages, and ultimately harm low-income communities. Shapiro also points out that Harris's economic record is under scrutiny, especially given her role in the Biden administration during a time of rising inflation and economic challenges. The podcast also discusses the DNC's provision of free abortions and vasectomies at the convention. This initiative, organized by Planned Parenthood and other groups, is presented as a bold move to attract attendees and promote reproductive rights. Shapiro expresses skepticism about the motivations behind this offering, questioning the appropriateness of such services being available at a political event. The mention of an inflatable IUD named Frida Womb further underscores the unconventional nature of the DNC's approach to reproductive health. As the DNC unfolds, Shapiro notes the underlying tensions within the Democratic Party. There is a palpable sense of resentment among party members, particularly those who feel sidelined by the decision to elevate Harris as the nominee. Shapiro references reports of Democrats feeling uneasy about their safety amid protests and unrest surrounding the convention. This internal strife is compounded by the party's struggle to unify its base, especially with the presence of radical left factions that are increasingly vocal in their demands. Protests are a significant theme in the podcast, with Shapiro discussing the potential for unrest during the DNC. Activists are expected to demonstrate against various issues, including the party's stance on Israel and Palestine. Shapiro highlights the irony of Democratic lawmakers being advised to avoid engaging with protesters, contrasting this with the party's historical approach to activism. The discussion emphasizes the challenges the DNC faces in maintaining a united front while addressing the diverse and often conflicting interests within its ranks. Looking ahead, Shapiro speculates on the implications of Harris's candidacy for the future of the Democratic Party. While she currently enjoys a lead in the polls, Shapiro warns that her lack of substantive policy discussions and the potential for backlash from both moderate and radical factions could jeopardize her campaign. The podcast concludes with a call for clarity and accountability in political discourse, urging voters to demand more from their candidates as the election approaches.